Okay, so again, good morning, guys, and then thank you for coming. First of all, I'd like to thank Voxxed Thessaloniki and the sponsors, because if not for them, this wouldn't be possible, right? So, I'm Devlin Duldulao. I'm originally from Southeast Asia, Manila, Philippines, and now I'm based in Oslo, Norway, working there for 3 years now. As I wear a lot of hats, different hats. I mean, not this hat, but an IT could be sometimes a software engineer and sometimes a DevOps engineer. So, my topic today is about GraphQL and Apollo. And this is going to be a full stack topic, for web developers, so we can build GraphQL in the front end and also in the back end. So, first question is GraphQL part of back end or front end? So it's either. It's a full stack, right? I just gave you a clue earlier. So this is gonna be slides, live demo, using Spring Boot, React. I'm not sure if I can pull out if you have time for Angular, but it's gonna be Apollo in the front end, in which will be similar in other JavaScript frameworks. So, what is GraphQL? So, it is a specification. Let's see here, a query language, yeah, for your API that provides more efficient, powerful, and flexible client-server communication alternative to REST or SOAP. What it means by specification is that GraphQL is only a set of general guidelines on how to query data in a really efficient way. But you may use different approaches or design patterns, when implementing GraphQL. What's good is that there are already GraphQL implementations in different languages. You can build a GraphQL server using Python, C#, Java, JavaScript, Elixir, Ruby, Scala, PHP, and more. And who's using GraphQL? Companies. So these are actually 3 years old or 4 years old. These are the companies that are using GraphQL in production, and it's growing fast. And this screenshot is 3 years ago, and probably a lot more here. So as you can see, Twitter, Lyft, which is like Uber, Facebook, KLM, Rakuten, Shopify, PayPal. So why use GraphQL? GraphQL has a lot of going on for it, but I will focus on the main advantages of moving your REST API to GraphQL also. And first of all, you get types, which guarantees that the data you get will be the type expected, and prevents many of the common errors with REST. Also, when you have multiple databases or even different databases serving same application, GraphQL is much better approach to this disjointed architecture, as it serves as a single point to do all your queries versus multiple separate entities. Another advantage, GraphQL, is the flexibility of the queries. You can query a very specific type of data, and you can replace the name on the fly, which is I'm going to present later during the live demo. However, GraphQL isn't the best solution in all cases, right? For instance, writing GraphQL tags along with your entities. If you're building a small application of API, REST could be much better approach. Consider the cost of developing the GraphQL tool versus the value it may provide. And if you're going to scale an application beyond the simple queries or already have a big implementation, then yes, GraphQL may make sense. So I would suggest start small with REST, because implementing GraphQL isn't that big of a deal, and when you're ready, go for it. So before we differentiate GraphQL from REST, let's see what's common between them. Both are one here, stateless, that one, and produce data in JSON format, available in any server-side languages and front-end frameworks. Now let's see what are the differences between the two. First, REST has multiple round trips to collect information from multiple resources, whereas in GraphQL, it has one single request to collect the information by aggregation of data. Next, multiple endpoints in REST, right? In GraphQL, it is single endpoint only. This makes GraphQL more maintainable and more user-friendly. Next would be overfetching and underfetching data resources in REST. While in GraphQL, you only get what you ask for, which is, again, on the live demo later. What else? In REST, caching is built into HTTP spec. GraphQL, on the other hand, has no automatic caching system, sorry. But libraries like Apollo on the front end can do the caching for you, or set up a proxy. That's another one. Or you can set up a proxy between the client app, between the client app and the GraphQL server. So, yeah, which is normal also for production infrastructure. Key concepts that I'd like you to know. One would be query, are used for reading. Mutation are used for writing, mutating data. Subscriptions is for creating WebSocket connections, very easy. Types defines your GraphQL schema, example string, int, ID, or custom types. And we have resolvers. Resolvers are the functions that respond to queries and mutations. So you do the business logic there. Simple as that. Resolvers. Context. Context is an object shared by all resolvers, specific to execution. It lets actually resolvers communicate it with each other as well. And it's useful for keeping data such as authentication info, the current user, database connection, data sources, and other things you need for running your business logic. And next would be schema here. So schema defines the shape of your data. This actually is just a union of queries and mutation. It's like a root. So schema, this is schema, and then queries and mutation. And last but not the least, data loaders. So that one, you also have to know that. It batches and caches your database queries. So before the demo, this is just want to show you an example of GraphQL query that you can send from a client app to a GraphQL server. And we can check it one by one. So we have query here first. Yeah, as you can see, queries, again, so read-only operation requested to a GraphQL server, other types of mutation, right, for writing. And here, object type, which is the most common, the basic component here of GraphQL schema. It's being used here as a requested field, and that will be the object to be returned. And here is scalar type. Can be primitive type, such as string, int, boolean, float. By the way, we also have float here, and the custom type, which is your own object. So what advantage of GraphQL is that you can be very specific about which kind of data you want to retrieve. I guess we can skip this because it's better if I'm going to do it during the live demo. And another one here, so you'll see the difference. Query, and then query here, get to do by ID. This is called operation type, operation name, sorry. And this is optional, but will help you in debugging and server-side logging. And this is how you would pass also parameters or arguments in which we'll see later. So yeah, let's move here. Introspection. So what is introspection? Every GraphQL server has a special schema field at the query route. And using that, you can expose all objects and fields in a GraphQL server. And this allows developers to create amazing tools. For example, auto documentation. So if you love Swagger UI as a documentation in writing REST, so in GraphQL you have this out of the box, so auto documentation, which you will see later in the GraphQL IDE. Code gen. You can imagine if you have some front-end code, for example, in React or in Angular, you can create your own, you can create interfaces or types automatically. You don't have to write anything. So in Apollo, there's a CLI for that, and it will create those files for you. Like, very productive. Static validation, so you don't even need to let a query go to the server and then get rejected because you know beforehand if that query is valid or not. So squigglies, so that's also included out of the blocks. Red squigglies and IDE integration for VS Code and other IDEs. And honestly, this is my favorite part of GraphQL, the introspection. So, how to get started, build GraphQL server, and then use GraphQL on the front end, Apollo normally, or Relay. But the one that I can suggest would be the Apollo. Okay, so in Spring Boot, release 2.7.0, there's a first-class citizen support for GraphQL. So that's in the release notes, which you can find. And to get started with GraphQL and Spring, so here is Spring for GraphQL, and make sure that the minimum version will be 2.7.0. And you need a web server. Could be MVC or Webflux, so either. So demo time. And show, I'll just share my screen. I think it's already mirror, yeah? Okay, let me know if it's too small for you. Just imagine, you know, I created this boilerplate using initializer and then added that GraphQL dependency. And a quick and dirty way of exposing a GraphQL endpoint would be going to source main, resources, create a GraphQL directory. And this is very important, making this correctly spelled, GraphQL, because the dependency will look into this directory. And you can name whatever you want. Of course, it should be meaningful. Let's say hello. And the file extension will be GraphQL with S. Just put it there. For the query, so we're going to define now what kind of operation we can do. Let's say hello world. Let's just return a string. So this is just very quick demo of this, and then you can put anywhere you need a controller. So let's name it. Yeah, could be anything again. And we need to import the controller and then return. What's the name of our definition? Hello world, right? Just copy that. And then you have to return a string, hello world. Yep, that would be it. But in order to map it, you need the query mapping annotation. Very easy, and all you need to do is just run it, and then hopefully the application will work for us. And the auto documentation that I mentioned earlier, as you can see here, imagine if you've built a lot of query definition and you don't need, again, a Swagger UI because this comes out of the box. And then we can start with query, and then use your keyboard control space, right? So you can see the available action that you can do. So here, hello world, you cannot just mistype anything because you will be guided by your IDE, hello world. And then as long as you can see this squiggly here, so meaning this is not a valid request and it's not gonna go to the server. So it's very helpful. So hello world, you have IntelliSense, enter, and this applies not only in Spring Boot, in any GraphQL backend or frontend. So that's a quick dirty of it, and then we can just remove this. I'm going to delete this. And then show you maybe here. Let's move this, because I already have something here. I'm just going to explain it one by one. Delete this. So this is a simple app, and I name it properly. Let's see here. We have client and project. This is just an admin where you can enter your customer, the clients, and the projects related to that customer. So we can start with project. So this is the custom type that I'm mentioning earlier. So this is a custom, and these are the primitive types, right? So ID is also a primitive, by the way. This is for giving IDs to your objects. String, string, string. We have enums here for the client, and a DTO for passing an argument. And then starting with query, now we're defining project, an action. This is gonna be part of the controller. So we need to pass an ID to get the project object. Projects, so how do you return an array? So this is how you're going to return an array, right? Client ID, you need an ID again to get the client, and then clients returning an array of client. So that's for the query. For the mutation, creating a new project would require this input, which is, we define this project input. So this is another way of passing or creating a parameter, or you can just, if this is just 3 properties, you can also create 3 properties here, something like that. But of course, if this is like 10 properties or 20, it's better to just put it in a custom type, or be a DTO. Deleting a project, passing an ID, right? And you cannot just return null, by the way, sorry, that's not possible. You're forced to return something. When deleting something, I think the best candidate would be just the ID of the object you deleted. So in delete client there, so there's no void here like that. So mutation, query, very simple. Creating now the controllers, right? Project query, again, we have controller, and I'm using H2 here, just an in-memory database. So you can move here. This will be an array of projects returning from my repository and project. This is what we need here. Again, the query mapping. Query mapping. This is very easy. We're all using annotations here. Annotations also for arguments, so that the GraphQL can intercept the argument you're sending. That's the payload, right? And using that payload to find the object in the database. So we have query, mutation, same thing. So new project from the input, just getting it. So I don't have an ORM mapper here. So see a very verbose here. So yeah, another thing that you'll see in a GraphQL project is this types here. It's just like a DTO for passing or creating parameters. Nothing special, getter and setter. And let's run this so we can see what's inside of this application. We can just go here also, and then so this is part of a GraphQL. Okay, by the way, I think I need to show you the dependencies that I'm using here. I think that's a good idea. So GraphQL, Spring Boot, starter GraphQL, which is the dependency from the initializer, right? Then MVC, book, and nothing special here. I'm looking for GraphqL. So what is this GraphqL? This is the client or the GraphQL IDE that you'll get out of the box. So by turning this on, how do you turn that on? So application properties, GraphqL enabled true. Now after turning it to true, you'll get this from localhost 8080 GraphqL. You get this out of the box GraphQL IDE, or you can use Insomnia. It's up to you. Also a good IDE to use, but you have this out of the box already versus Insomnia. We can just close this. So similar. So yeah, IDE part, query, again, auto documentation. Just by writing it, you'll get this, right? You can see the client, what is client, ID string, email, phone. So we can send a sample here. This is too big. I guess that's still readable. So create client. See here, create client. You can close this so you can see this. So what else is it's really what other things are good to know here? Phone, name, email. If you want to change this phone into, let's say, mobile, in REST, you would ask your backend developer, right? Can you make this as a mobile, not phone? Because we're asking the mobile number of the customers. So in GraphQL, technically, the backend developers, they gave some of their powers to the front-end developers, and now, as a front-end developers, I don't need their help. I can just change this to mobile from phone, and then let's change this. And the response now changed to mobile. So this is a part of GraphQL where you can easily change something. I don't care about email and mobile. I just want this. You can also do that. Right? That's very nice. As a front-end developer, I don't have to deal with the back-end developers and tell them, I would need this kind of shape in my front end, right? Could you do that? Sorry, I'm too busy, something like that. So yeah, this is really good for front-end developers. What else? Let's create a project here. Now we can go to history, create project. That's one. This should be a project name. Create project. So, another thing that I'm going to explain here. So this is, we're going to run this, get all projects. So you can see the array here that's returning. So you see the difference here. This is reading without arguments. Now, if you want to try your GraphQL query, and of course you need arguments, right? Because you define parameters. This is where you need to do it in this query variables. So you can see name, mail, phone. This is perfect for mutation. And this will land, this is how you write an argument here. What is this dollar sign? This is required. So this is going to be dynamic. Dollar name would be string. Dollar email would be string. Dollar phone would be string. And then just basically you're passing it here because the keys that you really need, or the name of the properties is name, email, phone. But you're not restricted to put name here. You can put here full name, something like that. Just make sure you're pasting it here. And then, of course, this is not gonna work because you define full name here. You can just do that. Yeah. So, yeah, a bit different than using Swagger UI, because in Swagger UI, normally you have this input, right? Whereas here in GraphQL client or GraphQL IDE, you need to define this, and sometimes it takes time. The good thing here is you can put as many as you want here, and this will be cached in the local storage. So when you get back here, all the queries are still here, and you can find the history of what you created. So, yeah. And make sure these are the same. Well, actually, you can see it here from your IntelliSense. What are the available when you do this? So you never get lost because everything is here, right? Even so, this is for the query. For the mutation, you also see what else in the mutation. New project, delete project, new client, delete client. And what it's returning, which is here. So, in my experience, this is really a winner. This new GraphQL included in the 2.7 in Spring Boot. Because before this release, the way to write a GraphQL in Spring Boot, let me show you a different version of GraphQL in Spring Boot through these data fetchers, and also different libraries, GraphQL Java or GraphQL Java. This one. So again, a different type of writing GraphQL. This is this is last month, technically, because when was the 2.7 was released? Just recently, right? So before that, this is how we would write GraphQL. And the difference would be, you don't need to create that GraphQL folder here. And because you'll be pointing this file explicitly in the GraphQL provider, which is somewhere here. And you have to define this, just stitching everything. So as you can see the difference, the other one is more friendly or developer friendly. Developer friendlier than this one. Resource get resource, so a bit explicit here. And we have this data fetcher. So Not much of annotations that you can see here, unlike in the other one that I showed you. So this is just to show you two different ways of writing GraphQL in Spring Boot. One's the latest, again, the earlier, and this is the old way of writing it. Anyways, I have our React here, React TypeScript. No, just React JavaScript. And maybe we can run this and see do I still have time? How many minutes? 5 minutes. All right, really quick here. So client, npm run, start. So packages, oops, Apollo client, that's it. And then the GraphQL, then you're good to go. So in React, maybe we can run this. Here it is. And when writing GraphQL application, I highly recommend using also the Apollo Google Chrome extension that you can find here. It's like also the same as the other one, the IDE, but you can see mutation here, Explorer, queries, cache. You can do lots of things here, very helpful. And the way to set this up, you can see queries, pages. Oh, no, this is client. How do you write a GraphQL query? So this is an example. So normally what you would do is copying this in real world. You'll be copying this and then pasting it in your front end application. Oh, no, not that one. Here. Using this GQL and then backtick, which is coming from Apollo client. And then that would, trigger the server to send requests through this Apollo setup, Apollo client, putting there the GraphQL endpoint with cache, right? So you can do some optimistic updates for creating very user-friendly application. Mutations, same thing. You copy this part here, copy, paste it here, something like that. Very easy for the front end. So this is, again, the front end part of GraphQL. Yeah, and one more thing to show you a different, language writing GraphQL service. So this is a GraphQL in the back end using JavaScript, and you will see the similarity here in the schema, name, and then you're composing these types for your GraphQL. ID, name, description, status, client. You have the client type, queries. So projects, yeah, you have these projects and resolver, which is, you can insert your business logic here, returning here, your JSON objects, project also. So that's the foundation of GraphQL. You're writing schemas, you're writing types, and then putting the queries and the mutations together to form a schema, and then there you go, you have this GraphQL endpoint that you can have. So let's jump back to our slides. So really quick, security in the API. So security bulk endpoints to minimize the number of queries. That's one thing you should do. Network level caching, limiting the maximum query size, and then pair resolver level authentication to prevent users who don't have rights to access the database. So another one, so same thing like this, looks like this. So you have this HTTP authentication and then authorization in the business logic area, which is the resolvers. And yeah. you can also do this. You have this GraphQL API, and then acts like a facade, a facade, and then querying from REST, querying from a MongoDB, from AWS, and then a self-service. So you can do that as well, and then that would be per resolver. One more thing, I think N1. Okay, I don't have time, but this is that very important. We have also already data loaders. So yeah, references, graphqljava.com, GraphQL org learn schema, GraphQL org learn, ApolloGraphQL.com for the front end, and YouTube of, this is Spring Boot 2.7 resource from, yeah, Josh Long.
Can you go back 2 slides? Because I think people want to take a picture of the reference. Go back 1 more.
Yeah, that one, yeah. Yep. And then, yeah, Apollo GraphQL. And then this one, Spring Boot 2.7, adds a Spring for GraphQL starter with auto-config. And then, yeah, you can learn Spring for GraphQL with Josh Long, that one. It's a YouTube playlist. And then, yeah, that's it. Summary, already mentioned it. Apollo for the front end, GraphQL Spring Boot, again, minimum 2.7. And then I'll hang around for questions later. Please don't hesitate to approach it.
Thank you, Devlin. Alrighty. Okay, so I know Devlin will be in the coffee room for questions, but we have one that's come through Wava. Is GraphQL most appropriate for CQRS with strong DDD? Is GraphQL most appropriate for CQRS with strong, I guess that's data-driven development?
Is GraphQL, so the question is GraphQL most appropriate for CQRS with strong DDD or domain-driven development? I would say yes. You can definitely do that in GraphQL. There's no stopping you. CQRS is just another design pattern in writing web applications or software, or any application. So I wouldn't say it's a best way. It depends on the business. It depends on the problem you're solving. Every business or every project is unique. Just stick to being pragmatic, of doing what is necessary in your project. So keep it simple. If it's a small project, you can start very pragmatic or practical in what you do. But definitely CQRS is something you can do in GraphQL without any problem.
So the question is, we used GraphQL a few years back in our company, and well, the main question is we had a problem with the typings whenever we used the generator in Angular for the queries. So whenever you change the field, you also have to change the type of the query itself, and then the next generation would override what you did. So do you prefer to have the auto-generated from the CLI queries, or do you actually suggest to type our own queries?
Okay, so question is, would you prefer using the CLI generator from, are you using the Apollo before?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, what year was that?
2019.
2019, so not that 2019.
I remember the whole team having problems with that, because whenever we changed something, then the typings were not correct. So maybe that was a library problem, but do you know if that's fixed now, or what's your suggestion for the queries itself?
Okay, so for the query, I'm not sure if it's already fixed. We use it, but not extensively. We also write it by hand. But I would definitely check it out if that problem was already fixed, because it really can help you write interfaces, several files without you writing it one by one, because there could be big, large objects that you'll be writing, and then it's very helpful to use a CLI, and then, yeah, if it's auto-generating something, it's a good choice, but of course, not every project is perfect. It takes time before it gets very stable. And yeah, 2019 is also the time we used it.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? Please raise your hand. There we go.
First of all, nice presentation, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
My question is, when it comes to performance and scalability, what it really matters at the end of the day is the query that is executed at the database. So, how you prevent a long-running query execution when you know from the client that few data are needed, and at the back end you have, let's say, an RDBMS with many joins and expressive queries. But actually, at the client side, you don't need the queries, the expensive data.
Okay, so thank you for liking the presentation at first. There are several ways to do optimization in that sense. That would be in the front end, right? Using Apollo caching and using optimistic updates. So if you're solving a problem of expensive querying in the database in the resolver level rather than in the front end, I think data loaders is already solving that, because data loaders, which is the part that I wasn't able to present, what it does is it batches queries and it caches queries. And then through that level, your queries to using your repository would be more efficient than not using that one. Because through that data loaders, it also solves the N1 plus problem, which is exponentially you're creating extra round trips in the database for that kind of problem, which is already solved. Yeah.
So they act like caching mechanism.
Yeah. Caching, okay. And then batching also, which is very important.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, folks. I think I have time for one more if anybody wants to take a crack at another question from Devlin. If not, we will release you for the next 6 minutes, and we shall say thank you very, very much, Devlin, for that wonderful talk.
Thank you. I will be there. I will be there, don't worry.
A little gift from us to you.